You can also change the width or the height of any row or column. Changes made like this generally affect the entire column or row, so generally you'll follow the same procedure. As with everything in Excel, there's multiple ways of doing this. So again, we're going to show you how we do it the right click way where relevant, but there are many other ways to do it, including up here in the format where you'll see it talks about row height, column width, etc. auto fitting. So if we want to change the width of a column, it's as simple as you can highlight that column, and when you hover, can you see as you pass over that point there, you get a little scroll bar with 2 arrows. So what it's telling you is it's now going to change the width. If I click and hold, it tells me what my width is, and I can now go left or right. So I can make this very small if I want, or I can make it a lot bigger. Same thing applies to height. So when I click here, if I go down, you can see the icon changes as you cross over the border of the row. I click and hold, and I can move it up and down. So there I'm making the 16 smaller. If I wanted to make 17 bigger, I'd go lower down, click, hold, and drag, and I can make it as big as I want. Where you often need to do this is when a column, for example, is not wide enough. So these hashes here are telling me that there's something there, there's numbers or text, probably numbers here, but we just can't see what's actually written there because of the size. So there's a couple of ways we can do it. Firstly, we can manually do it. So I'm going to go here, click and hold, and drag it a bit wider. And you'll see there it fits. If I go a little bit narrow, there it doesn't fit, etc. So that's one way to do it. Another way you can do it is there's the equivalent of an auto fit. So if I hover over that grid line, instead of clicking and holding, if I double click, you'll see it automatically auto fits. So it looks for the biggest item in that column and fits to that. That works well in most cases. Just be careful. Can you see here, if we decide we want to auto fit this, maybe to make it a bit smaller, when you double click, you need to realize Excel's seeing this. So when I double click, you can see it's taken the worst, the widest item and put it there. So when you do the auto fit, just be careful, especially in the early columns, you might have other items in it, which makes it a lot wider than it should be. Exact same thing works with rows. So you'll see here, there's a bit of wrapped text here, so you can see it's not quite fitting. So what we can do is we can hover over here. We can either manually do it. So I'm going to click, hold, drag. Just going to undo. Or if I double click, you'll see it auto fits the row. It basically sees what the worst or the highest cell is, and that's what it makes that row so that they all fit in. Those ways all involve judgment and you pretty much guessing or working out the size you want. Realize that there's another way to do it, which is very precise. So if I go to this column and I right click, you'll see here something called column width. When I click on it, it tells me exactly how wide that column is. So for example, if I decide that actually I'd prefer this column to be 15, when I say OK, it gives me that exact same column width. It can be useful where, for example, I want that one also to be 15. You'll see it's 19, so for me to hover here and get it exactly 15 can be a little bit tedious. There, we've got it there, but generally that's a good way of doing. Right click, column width, and you can specify it exactly. Same with a row, highlight a row, right click, now this is row height, and it gives us the number. Just some tips or tricks with regards to resizing. As you've seen, we can click on a column and highlight it and move it around. What we can do as well is if I highlight many columns, the assumption is that when you've highlighted many columns, whatever you do to one, you want to happen to the others. So if I take column G and I make it, for example, 6, when I let go, notice that that same width is used for column H and I. If I decide I want to auto-fit, so I've highlighted those 3 columns and I've decided I'm going to auto-fit it on column H. When I double click, you'll see that one auto-fits. These 2, although they didn't change, is because they had nothing in them. So let's just undo, and I'm going to choose maybe these items here. So when I double click, you'll see that did an auto fit. This did a different auto fit. So it's now not applying the rule of if this one's a width of 10, then make them all 10. It's individually going to each one and auto fitting it. In extreme cases, you may actually want the column or row to effectively disappear. Now you could do it like this. You could effectively make it 0. So you'll see it says width of 0 and it looks like it's disappeared. But a better way and safer way is to actually just hide that column or row, and it's fairly simple, pretty similar to the insert and delete. You highlight a column, you right click, and you'll see there's an item there called hide. When I click hide, you'll see it disappears for all intents and purposes. If I wanted to come back, I just highlight the 2 columns either side of it, I right click and I say unhide, and it comes back. You can do many at a time, so if I want to get rid of these instructions, I highlight all of that, I right click and I say hide, and they go away. And similarly, I can click here and unhide. Exactly the same rules work on the rows. So if for whatever reason I decided I want to hide these ones in grey, so now I'm going to hide them separately. I'm highlighting 6, push my control button, highlight row 14, right click and say hide. You'll see it's hidden those 2 rows. To unhide them, again, we could do it individually, or I'm just going to highlight the whole lot, right click and say unhide.